Good evening. Today is Thursday, February 27th. I'm going to be doing a review on the Ancestors of Avalon book by Diana Paxson. This book was published in 2004 and it is part of the Mists of Avalon prequel series. This is the first book that I've read within this series. I own about four or five of the books. They are Ancestors of Avalon, Lady of Avalon, The Forest House, Ravens of Avalon, Priestess of Avalon. They are all prequels to Marion Zimmer Bradley's Mists of Avalon that was published, I believe, in the 1980s. This is the first book that I've actually read within the series. I wanted to learn some of the backstory to the Mists of Avalon and just to the Isle of Avalon itself. I wanted to learn just some of the background and the history of Avalon and what exactly Avalon was, who the people who inhabited Avalon are. So this book, Ancestors of Avalon, gives some background into that. To get the complete story, you would probably have to read all of the prequels to fully understand all of the characters and history of Avalon preceding Mists of Avalon. So I started with Ancestors of Avalon. I'm going to start by giving a summary of the book. Um, it won't contain any spoilers. A lot of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to sort of expand on the synopsis that is included on the book cover. So I'm just going to make it a little bit longer, but I won't be really spoiling pretty much any of the story. So this book, The Ancestors of Avalon, begins with the fall of Atlantis. In this book, Atlantis is called the Sea Kingdoms. So there are various sort of islands and kingdoms that all of them together comprise Atlantis. In the beginning of this book, Atlantis sinks. Especially the specific sea kingdoms where the characters in this book are living. So we get really the story of one or two of the islands that comprise Atlantis. So this book begins at the very beginning with the sinking of Avalon, and the way in which the characters flee from Avalon on ships in desperation. Some of the characters, some of the people who lived in Atlantis, in the Sea Kingdoms, decide not to flee and they choose to instead die on their native land. So they sink and drown along with Atlantis. So the people that do flee Atlantis, it's like a big group. You have some soldiers, you have priests and priestesses, you have seers, you have a prince, right? So this sort of somewhat large group of people, when they flee Atlantis on the ships, they flee on more than one ship, and the ships are eventually separated while they're at sea, and they end up in different places. One group finds themselves at this place called the Tor, Tor. The other group ends up in a place called Azin Wylir, Azin Ilir. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. A lot of the names in this book are difficult to pronounce, both of the characters and of the places. In the very beginning of the book, they have a list of characters and a list of all the places in the story, along with some short descriptions of all of the places and all of the characters. So I'm not sure that you can see that, but this is a list, the beginning part of the list of all the places that in which the story takes place, right? So, anyways, as the two groups separate, one of them going to the tour and the other one ending up in this other place called Azan, a lot of pain is caused by the separation of these two groups. Many of them were husbands and wives who become separated, along with the priestesses and the seers. They were all one group of people. They were a society who grew up together, who thrived together, right? And because of the destruction of Atlantis, they become separated. So you have husband and wives who were separated. You have a group of priests. They are, I believe, 12, like the chosen 12 group of priests and priestesses who are also separated, who sort of lose their powers and their understanding of things like magic as they are separated and are moved to a different land. The two main characters in the story, a woman priestess named Terakai, again, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and her husband, Mikhail, are separated. Much of the story focuses on how their separation affects them. Terakai ends up having a child that is Mikhail's, although neither of them knew that she was expecting. The two separate groups first must learn to survive in these new lands, with all of their customs now lost to the Sea Kingdoms. Both groups rely on the native populations of their new places to teach them how to survive. They must learn new methods of agriculture, fishing, and hunting in these new lands where they end up. As the book progresses, the two groups begin to rebuild some aspects of their former way of life in Atlantis. Specifically, they are trying to build a new temple of light. They're trying to build a new temple of light and also to rebuild their old religion in this new land. Although in the new land, obviously, there is no temple for their new religion. And Mikhail assists in the building of what we know today to be Stonehenge. So Terakai, one of the main characters and priestesses, who ends up at this place called the Tor. She is the main one who is sort of strengthening and rebuilding the religion of Atlantis in this new land. And Mikhail, they are separated by the ships, like I said earlier. Mikhail is assisting this new ruler. His name is Jalarin, I think, or Toleran. It's Tjalarn. He is helping this prince and this ruler to build Stonehenge. Stonehenge is a like a sonar experiment where the priests and priestesses use their voices to bounce off of the stones of Stonehenge, and they use it to sort of like create a powerful sonar wave. And they can do things like levitate stones, they can send psychic like psychic sounds to different lands and to different groups of people. As these two different groups that came from Atlantis, the one that went to Tor and the other group that went to Azan, as they begin to rebuild and to learn a new way of life, eventually they cross paths again. A little bit later in the story, they cross paths, but it's been about 5 years that they have been separated, and both groups have been committed to rebuilding their old ways of life in this new land, and loyalties are shifted from the one group that was together in Atlantis to sort of their loyalties turn to their specific smaller groups, so that eventually in the story there is a conflict between the two groups. The one group at the Tor and the one group at Azan. Even though some of them are husband and wives, partners, priests who used to work together, they eventually are somewhat pitted against one another. That is a brief summary of what the book is about and some of like the main conflicts that the book has. I am about 20 or 30 pages out from the ending. I am enjoying it a lot. It's been hard to keep up with all of the different characters and all of the different places in which the story is set. Like I said earlier, there is a pretty lengthy character list and locations, like settings list at the beginning of the book to help you to keep track of all the characters. Also, a lot of the characters' names and places are difficult to pronounce and to remember because they're just not the kinds of names that we're familiar with today. Because this story is supposed to take place, supposedly. Let me see. I think there's a map here. So this story takes place 2000 years, 2000 BC. So this is very much so pre-Christian Europe, right? So a lot of the names are supposed to be somewhat realistic to essentially what people's names used to be maybe 4 or 5 thousand years ago, and especially these being people who are Atlanteans, right? So I've been very interested in Atlantis for a very long time. I really liked that this series, this prequel series to the Mists of Avalon, connects the fall of Atlantis with the ancestors of Avalon. So the people from Avalon, from the Mists of Avalon, their ancestors going way back were really Atlanteans. That was one connection that I was very much fascinated by with this book and with this, and why I'm interested in reading more of this series. I would personally, I would certainly recommend this book for anyone who really likes, if they like the Mists of Avalon or any of the Arthurian legends. I would recommend this book. I really liked the conflict that there was. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of pain also between the characters as far as them experiencing loss of loved ones, the loss of their native homeland. So that was something that I felt like I could connect to in a way. I like that the book was somewhat tragic, somewhat sad. There are many reasons for hope. They do look forward to a hopeful future where they can rebuild their way of life. But the book itself, the tone of the book itself is somewhat melancholic, which I liked personally. From here, I'm going to move on to. I've been debating which book to read next. Like I said, I own a good portion of the prequel series of the Avalon books, but since I have not read the original Mists of Avalon on which this prequel series is based, I'm thinking I'm going to move on to the Mists of Avalon itself. I'm a little bit intimidated because it's a lengthy book, but it's a book that I've had on my list for a very long time. So I'm gonna probably read that one next. Anyways, that is the end of the review and the summary. Thank you for watching. I will keep you posted on the next book that I read and provide a review for it as well. Thank you.